Have you ever noticed how the same negative thoughts keep coming back, no matter how much you try to let them go? The more you try to push them away, the louder they seem to return. Many people believe peace comes from eliminating unwanted thoughts, but that struggle often creates even more tension. From a Buddhist perspective, the mind doesn't work through suppression, it works through cultivation. Thoughts are not enemies to defeat. They are seeds that take root through attention and repetition. Some seeds arrive on their own, shaped by past experiences and habits. Others are planted through what we repeatedly focus on, believe, and react to. While you can't control every seed that lands in the mind, you do control what you water, and what you water over time is what grows. Most people think their thoughts are random, passing reactions that come and go without meaning. But from a Buddhist perspective, the mind is not chaotic, it is conditioned. What appears in your mind today is closely related to what has been repeated, believed, and reacted to over time. This is why the image of a garden is so helpful. Every thought is like a seed. Some are planted intentionally through beliefs you've accepted or stories you've repeated about yourself. Others arrive through past experiences, emotional habits, or influences you barely noticed at the time, but no seed grows on its own. What makes a thought powerful is not its appearance, it's the attention it receives. When a thought is revisited, believed, or emotionally charged, it gets watered. Over time, it develops roots. A single moment of worry does not define a life, but constant worry becomes a pattern. A brief feeling of self-doubt is natural, but repeated self-doubt becomes an inner landscape. Buddhist teachings remind us that the mind follows what it repeatedly attends to. Where awareness goes, energy flows, and where energy flows, growth happens. This explains why inner life often feels familiar, even when we want change. The mind keeps returning to what it has already cultivated. Stress, calm, confidence, or fear are not accidents. They are the harvest of long-term attention. The important realization is this: the garden is not fixed. What you experience internally is not a permanent truth about who you are. It is simply the result of what has been grown so far. And with awareness, cultivation can change. When you understand this, blame softens. You stop fighting the mind and begin to work with it. The life you experience is the harvest of what your mind has been growing, and that means a new harvest is always possible. Every garden grows weeds, not because something is wrong, but because conditions allow them. The same is true of the mind. Negative thought patterns do not appear because you are broken. They appear because they have been fed, often unconsciously. Some weeds are obvious: anger that flares quickly, fear that tightens the body, rumination that circles the same thoughts again and again. Others are quieter: subtle self-doubt, constant comparison, a background sense of not being enough. These patterns rarely announce themselves loudly. They repeat softly, day after day. From a Buddhist perspective, habitual thinking creates continuity. What repeats begins to feel familiar, and what feels familiar often feels true, even when it isn't. This is why awareness is so important. You don't remove negative patterns by arguing with them or trying to force them away. Resistance often gives them more energy. Instead, Buddhism teaches clear seeing. The moment you notice a thought as a pattern, this is self-doubt, this is fear repeating, this is rumination again, something shifts. The thought is no longer invisible, it is no longer fused with identity, it becomes an object of awareness rather than a command. Seeing a pattern weakens it because it interrupts automatic feeding. This doesn't mean judging yourself for having negative thoughts. Judgment is just another weed. Awareness is gentle. It observes without blame. It notices how often a thought appears, what triggers it, and how the body reacts. You don't pull weeds by hating them. You pull them by seeing them clearly. And once seen, they no longer grow unchecked. If negative thoughts cause so much distress, a natural question arises. Why do we keep returning to them? Why does the mind so easily fall back into worry, self-criticism, or fear, even when we know it hurts? From a Buddhist perspective, the answer is not weakness. It is familiarity. The mind is drawn to what it knows. A familiar pattern feels predictable, even if it is painful. Unfamiliar states, such as calm, openness, or confidence, can feel uncertain, and the mind often mistakes familiarity for safety. This is why letting go of harmful thoughts can feel uncomfortable at first. When an old pattern loosens, there is a moment of groundlessness. The story you've been telling yourself fades, and the mind doesn't yet know what will replace it. That space can feel unsettling, so the mind rushes back to what it recognizes. Buddhism calls this attachment, not as something pleasant, but as something habitual. Attachment doesn't mean liking a thought. It means returning to it automatically, without seeing another option. Freedom begins the moment this habit is seen clearly. When you recognize that a thought persists because it is familiar, not because it is true or useful, its grip weakens. You stop blaming yourself for having it. You stop feeding it with resistance or belief. We don't cling to negative thoughts because they help us. We cling because they are familiar. And familiarity, once seen, no longer has the same power. Once you understand that thoughts are seeds, the next question becomes practical. How do you change what grows? Buddhism does not answer this by telling you to force better thoughts or eliminate bad ones. That approach only creates inner struggle. Instead, it teaches something more subtle and effective. You change the conditions. A seed can only grow if the soil supports it. In the same way, negative thoughts thrive in certain inner conditions: tension, distraction, self-judgment, and reactivity. Buddhist mind training works by gently transforming this inner soil. One essential practice is mindfulness of the breath. This is not about controlling breathing or calming down on command. It is about stabilizing attention. When awareness rests on the breath, even briefly, the mind becomes less scattered. This steadiness makes it harder for anxious or compulsive thoughts to take over. You are not suppressing thoughts. You are no longer feeding them constant attention. Another practice is loving kindness toward yourself. Many negative patterns are sustained by harsh inner criticism. The mind speaks in a voice that is impatient, demanding, or unforgiving. Loving kindness does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means relating to your own difficulty with warmth rather than punishment. When the inner environment softens, thoughts rooted in fear and self-blame lose their nourishment. A third practice is compassionate self-talk. This means consciously noticing how you speak to yourself during stress and gently adjusting the tone. Instead of, "I always mess this up," the mind learns to say, "This is difficult right now." This is not forced positivity. It is accuracy without cruelty. These practices do not work overnight, and they are not about replacing every negative thought with a positive one. They work because they change the soil in which thoughts grow. When attention is steadier, kindness is present, and self-talk becomes humane. Many harmful thoughts simply fail to take root. They appear, but they don't dominate. Over time, the mind begins to grow different qualities: patience, clarity, resilience, without force. You don't fight negative thoughts. You change the conditions they grow in. And when the conditions change, the harvest naturally follows. Real change does not require dramatic effort. It requires consistency. In Buddhist practice, transformation happens through small, repeated choices, not through intensity or force. A few minutes of awareness each day is enough to begin shifting the mind. 5 minutes of mindful breathing, a brief pause before reacting, a moment of kindness toward yourself instead of criticism. These may seem insignificant, but they are seeds. What matters is not how long you practice, but what you repeatedly return attention to. Each time you notice a thought without believing it, you are planting a seed of clarity. Each time you soften your inner voice instead of attacking yourself, you plant a seed of compassion. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you plant a seed of freedom. Buddhism teaches that intention shapes direction. You may not control every thought that arises, but you can choose where attention rests next. And where attention rests, growth follows. This is how change becomes sustainable, not by trying to overhaul the mind, but by gently redirecting it again and again. Repetition creates transformation because it rewires what feels familiar. A single seed will not change a field, but daily planting will. Over time, the mind begins to expect calm instead of tension, awareness instead of reactivity, kindness instead of self-blame. These qualities don't appear suddenly. They emerge quietly through accumulation. When practice is small and consistent, it doesn't exhaust you, it supports you. And without realizing it at first, you begin living from a different inner landscape, one shaped not by force, but by care. When the mind is cultivated patiently, the effects show up naturally, not as constant happiness, but as steadiness. Life does not stop presenting challenges. Pressure, conflict, and uncertainty still arise. What changes is how they are met. You begin to notice more space between trigger and response. Emotions move through without taking over. Difficult thoughts arise, but they don't define the moment. There is more clarity, less inner noise. This is resilience, not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to stay present within it. Relationships often soften as well. When the inner environment is calmer, you react less defensively. You listen more clearly. You speak with less urgency. Conflicts lose intensity because they are no longer fed by unconscious habits. From a Buddhist perspective, peace is not something you chase. It arises when conditions support it, when awareness is present, when kindness replaces self-attack, and when reaction is no longer automatic, calm appears on its own. You stop reacting to life as if it's happening to you, and start responding from clarity. This is the harvest of mind training, not perfection, not control, but a quieter strength, a mind that bends without breaking, a heart that remains open without being overwhelmed. When the mind is cultivated, life responds differently, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Even with practice, storms will come. Old thoughts may return. Habits you believed were gone might reappear during stress, fatigue, or change. From a Buddhist perspective, this is not failure, it is the nature of conditioning. Growth in the mind is not linear. Some days feel clear and spacious, other days feel tangled and reactive. What matters is not maintaining constant calm, but returning again and again to awareness with patience. A healthy garden is not weed-free, it is tended. Buddhism emphasizes gentle consistency over perfection. Each time you notice an old pattern without feeding it, the habit weakens. Each time you respond with compassion instead of self-criticism, the soil softens. These moments count even when they feel small. Patience is essential. Harshness toward yourself creates the same conditions that allow negative patterns to thrive. Compassion sustains growth because it keeps the mind open rather than defensive. This is why the practice is ongoing. There is no final state where the mind stops producing difficult thoughts. There is only increasing skill in how you relate to them. When you tend the mind with steadiness instead of force, setbacks lose their power. They become reminders to return, not reasons to give up. You don't need to control every thought that appears. Thoughts will come and go, just as seeds land in any field. What matters is what you continue to nourish. When you practice awareness, kindness, and patience, you gradually shape the inner environment in which your life unfolds. This doesn't only affect how you feel, it changes how you meet others, how you respond to difficulty, and how you move through the world. Take a moment to reflect on what you've been watering lately. If this perspective resonates, you're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more reflections rooted in Buddhist wisdom. You may not control every seed that lands, but you decide what grows.